I was weaned on the Biggles books of Captain W.E. Johns. Long before cartoonist Charles M. Schulz had Snoopy engaging him astride the roof of his kennel, I had the Red Baron in my gun sights over the trenches of World War I. My sketchbooks were filled with drawings and watercolors of the biplanes and triplanes that fought in that war, and suspended from the ceiling of my bedroom were model Sopwith Camels and SE-5As. My favorite magazine, The Boy's Own Paper, encouraged its pubescent readers to submit their own literary contributions, thanks to which, in 1948, I won first prize in the under-14s category of a short story contest. This required me to provide a satisfactory explanation and a convincing ending for an incomplete scenario entailing the discovery of a mysterious aircraft on an abandoned airfield. The prize money was a princely £5, but the satisfaction mattered more, and the theme was right up my runway. In those days, Hastings, where I had settled with my parents on the south coast of England, possessed its own airfield, if one could call it that. Long since replaced by a housing estate, Pebsham was basically an open field, just large enough to accommodate privately owned aircraft like the Miles Messenger, hovering over my crude attempt to portray what it looked like. On weekends and school holidays, I used to hang around Pebsham in the hopes that somebody, visiting pilot perhaps, might require my assistance by way of swinging the propeller or pulling away the chocks, in return for which he might offer me a lift to some neighbouring airfield like Shoreham or Redhill, whence I could make my way home by train. My greatest hope was that one day I might earn a ride in the fourth oldest aircraft listed in the British Aircraft Register. This was a German-built Clem monoplane, registered in 1928 and owned by local garage proprietor George Lush, who stored it disassembled in a Quonset hut at the edge of the field. Born of a design for gliders, the Clem boasted the largest wingspan of any light plane of its period. Measuring 18 meters from tip to tip, this low engine power and glider-like temperament made it difficult to manage in high wind conditions, so that George only took it up on perfectly windless days. The result was that every time I sensed the merest possibility of a perfectly windless day, I would dash down to Pebsham Airfield and wait in hopes of an appearance by George. Finally, after many such days when I had helped him drag the fuselage from its hangar and clip on its wings, he trusted me enough to let me fly with him in the back cockpit. When I flew with him in 1949, I was 14 and George was already in his 60s. What we had in common was our shared infatuation with the golden age of flying, which was already receding over the horizons of history. As a Royal Flying Corps pilot of World War I, George had piloted an SE-5A, and one day, over the trenches of the Somme, he had met in combat the redoubtable Hermann Göring, who had just succeeded the even more formidable Red Baron, the late Manfred von Richtofen, as head of JG-1 Squadron, better known as the Flying Circus. Göring flew a white Fokker D-7 with the standard black crosses of the German Air Force. George's SE-5A was powered by a Hispano-Suiza engine, affording him the advantage of a freely maneuverable Lewis 303 gun mounted on the upper wing, directly above his cockpit. When he and his adversary found themselves locked in a tight spiral, he employed his ability to angle the Lewis gun so that it fired across the intervening space. The trouble was, George didn't have much ammunition left in his radial drum, so that, to George's surprise and relief, Göring signaled disengagement, grinning under his goggles as if to suggest, "Let's do this again some other time." Göring at that point had 22 kills to his credit. George had none. He would have been a sitting duck had his adversary sought to follow him through. George's account of the engagement was laconic, matter-of-fact. Göring's gallant conduct on that occasion explained why George could never subsequently see him as the bloated morphine addict who founded the Gestapo and then went on to command Hitler's World War II Luftwaffe, leave alone the convicted war criminal of the Nuremberg trials who swallowed cyanide 2 hours before he was due to hang.